What's up, everybody? Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles. Today we're going to cover basic boa constrictor care. Now, if you guys have been following me for a while now, you know that a couple years ago I did a video on basic boa constrictor care. The information in the video, if you ask me, that was on point. That was some good stuff. But the video quality itself was a little bit lacking. I was in a dark hotel room while I was traveling for work. The lighting was bad. The video quality was bad. I was filming on my camera phone, and I thought it was time to bring that up to date for you. And before we get into the video, I do want to state that these are the ways that I've been able to successfully keep, raise, and breed reptiles and boa constrictors more specifically over the past 20 plus years. So we're not going to get too much into the breeding component of it because that brings a lot of different intricacies into it, but this is always my baseline that you need to understand. And in this video, I am going to pull some breeding tips into it and some of the breeding pieces, but I'm not going to do a full detailed breeding video and all the temperature changes. This is going to be more if you purchase a boa at a reptile show, if you purchase a boa from me, I'm going to want you to watch this video so you understand how I want you to keep it. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, basic boa constrictor care. So there's three main components to keeping a boa, or really any reptile in captivity, healthy and raising them to become an awesome pet or an awesome breeder. So step number one is you're going to need to have your heating on point. Now, heating can fluctuate a little bit. Just like in our natural environment for us, the heat is going to change. It's not always going to, if I walk out today, it might be X degree. I walk out tomorrow, it's not going to be the same, and the day before it wasn't the same. In general, that's the same type of deal with boa constrictors and most reptiles in captivity. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as I'm giving you these temperature ranges. So boa constrictors, I like to give them a hot spot about 88 to 95 degrees. All year round, and that's mainly because these guys are cold-blooded, as we all know, and they need that temperature to properly thermoregulate and digest their food and keep their metabolism going. If they're cold, their metabolism slows down. They can't process food, they can't digest, and they can't keep their immune system up. So heat is super important when raising any cold-blooded animals, specifically boa constrictors, as is the topic of this video. The cool side of their cage, I like to keep somewhere about 78 to 82-ish. Now, if it dips a little bit lower, 75 or so, if it goes a little bit higher, 85, that's not a big deal. Same thing with the hot end. If you dip down 76-ish, or 86, 85, and you go up a little bit hotter, 96, 97, that's not a big deal either. As long as we're going to shoot for that target, those target ranges of 88 to 95 degrees, and that 78 to 82 degrees, we're in really good shape. It is really important to give these snakes an area that they can thermoregulate. So you want the cage to be large enough so that these guys can thermoregulate within it. And that's the importance of giving the adequate size caging, is that you can create those thermal zones for them. Their hot area should be able to have the whole snake in it. Shouldn't have a heat pad over here and your snake can only fit one small coil of its body, because that's not really going to give it the adequate heat to do it. They may survive. I mean, these boas are really hardy, as I said in other videos, but you really need to give them an adequate spot. So this snake coiled might be, 1 foot or so. You need to make sure you have at least a 1 foot hot area where they can always get their whole body to that 88 to 95 degrees. And then you always want to make sure that they can move away from that hot area. Some people will overcompensate the heat because they're having a hard time keeping their whole cage up to temp, but they really need that cold area, specifically when you're going into breeding. And then in between, I like to keep, I'll call it my ambient temperature, in between my hot and cold. And my ambient temperature, I like to keep somewhere between 80 to 85 degrees. That way they can move around, they can do whatever they need to do, and they can keep their body temperature where it needs to be. These animals are not dumb. They may be instinctual, but they're not dumb. They know exactly what they need to do. Just like us, you put us outside in the cold weather, we're going to know we're cold, we need to get warm. You put us into some hot weather, we're going to move into the shade so we can cool off a little bit. Same thing with boa constrictors and reptiles in general, is they're pretty damn smart from an instinctual standpoint. So with all that in mind, again, hot side somewhere between 88 to 95, cool end somewhere between 78 to 82, and then ambient somewhere in between there so that they can move all throughout their cage. Let's get right into humidity. Humidity is a really important factor for boa constrictors and a lot of reptiles in general. they all have very specific humidity requirements. For boa constrictors, I like to keep them between like a 50 to 75% humidity. That's what I found works really well for me. It keeps them healthy, it gives them good sheds, it's not over humidifying them, and that's really where I like to target my humidity. Now, with that in mind, these guys in their natural environment, there may be in, especially in their wet or rainy season, they may be up in the 100% humidity all the time. Now that's fantastic, especially if you can make it in captivity. But in captivity, the difference between us, this captive environment, and the wild is that they have airflow. In captivity, it's in order to get high humidity like that, a lot of the times you have to sacrifice your airflow. And with that, a humid environment that is warm is going to generate a lot of bacteria. Now, again, in the wild environment, they have airflow moving through, so they're getting fresh air all the time. In a captive environment, we have to be conscious that we generally don't have constant airflow moving through our cages. We might have a lot of ventilation, and that's fantastic, but we're always struggling with, we have a lot of ventilation, but now our humidity drops. So we have to find that balance, and I found that that 50 to 75% humidity really is a nice balance for captive animals. 50%, 75%, they're going to have nice adequate sheds, they won't have respiratory problems, and that's really what I try to target. Now, my whole room is generally pretty humid, so the little microclimates I create within the cages only further benefits these animals to bring up their humidity a little bit. Throughout the year, I'll check their sheds, and if you guys did see on some of my other videos, I did one specific on shedding. That's kind of how I'll gauge humidity. Now, they do have these little humidity gauges, and you can buy one at Walmart, like a digital humidity gauge. They work okay, but it's really good to be able to use yourself, use your eyes, and understand what's happening to the snakes to gauge humidity. Another good indicator is things like, if you see these cages behind me, they have a lot of dew on the container itself. So generally, if there's some type of water droplet starting to accumulate on the cage, and it's not like a condensation. It's not a condensation because there's a temperature difference. That's what we're really starting to creep up into the over 80%. So that's like that. I just cleaned these cages yesterday, and maybe they spilled some water, or I like to mist the substrate a little bit, boost their humidity up. So the humidity after I clean them might be up in the 80s, 90s, 90%. Then over the course of the week, it'll slowly drop, probably in the 60 to 70%. And that's what I found works for me. So you guys really need to figure out what works for you, depending on the different setups that you have and the different airflows. So humidity, again, 50 to 75% is what I try to target. The next one is feeding. We need to have healthy, adequately fed snakes that are going to consistently give us this constant growth. And in order to grow them, you need to feed them. I have a whole video on feeding and prey size and things like that. So that's another one I may redo with some higher quality video and higher quality audio. But overall, the content is there. If you're wondering about feeding, make sure you check that out. But the feeding in general, we always want to feed high quality prey items. There's a whole list of different rodent suppliers for us out there, and you don't need to just stick to rodents. Boas are pretty easy. I usually switch between rats and mice. I'll sometimes do chicks and chickens, and then occasionally I'll do guinea pigs. I like to vary it up a little bit, but rats and mice are my staple. In the wild, these guys will eat anything from rats and different types of rodents and guinea pigs to birds to potentially monkeys if they're large enough or the monkey small enough. So I think it is good to give them a varied diet, but I always want to keep rodents as my staple. Rodents have a nice balanced fat content to them, and I found it does give them a nice growth rate. So that's what I stick to. Again, some of my larger adults, I might switch to rabbits at times, but what you want to keep as your staple is a high-quality food source that's readily available to you, because obviously if I go tell you to feed monkeys, you're not going to be able to do that. I don't know, don't feed monkeys. Another thing with feeding is you always want to feed whole prey. I'll occasionally see these posts on Facebook. People are feeding their animals like chicken thighs or a drumstick. That's not something you want to do. I don't know what started that, but whole prey really is crucial to the proper development of these animals. It's even in a pinch, do not feed like a Purdue chicken wing. There's all kinds of bacteria that starts to grow on these things as they're being processed. And that's the reason why we can't really eat it raw. We shouldn't be eating anything raw, well, we can eat some things raw, but raw chicken in general is going to harbor all kinds of different bacteria and salmonella just from the processing of it itself. So again, that can be passed on to our snakes, and that's why we want to be always feeding this whole prey. There's also a deficiency that they may get if you're constantly just feeding this pieces of prey or prey parts as opposed to a whole prey. They really do need this, the fur, the bones, the skin, the organs, and everything that the rodent or animal might be eating in the wild. So getting into that as well, that's why it's important to trust your rodent supplier, that they're feeding these animals a high quality diet, because what your rodent eats is what these animals are going to eat. Just like us, if we buy high quality food, we're going to be eating high quality food. In general, sometimes, sometimes you can get the exception, like Snickers are delicious and Reese's Cups, but for the most part, we want to make sure we're feeding as high of quality food as we can afford, and that's kind of boa constrictor care in a nutshell. You need your heat, your humidity, and your food, and then you're going to be in really good shape. For breeding, again, we're going to fluctuate the temperatures a little bit. We're going to play with our feeding, but and even our humidity, we're going to mess with that. But for the most part, if you're just raising these animals in captivity, this is a good guide to follow. And hopefully this helps you guys out. So if you appreciate this channel, please like, subscribe, and share the video. Hit that bell notification with your subscriptions as well. I've been producing a video every Wednesday and Saturday, but you'll get those notifications if you hit that bell. And if you share the video, it just grows this channel and makes these videos easier to do. I get a wider audience base and I can hear a wider set of topics. So with that said, if you guys want to hear a topic, please let me know. We're going to wrap this video up. I'm going to zoom in on this girl so you can take a good look, and then we'll close it up. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you following. And let's take one more look at this here. Super pretty snake. This is a Kal albino. But so that's it. We're going to wrap it up, and let's keep it moving. Thanks, guys.